Hey, welcome to Phoenix Kitchen, where today we're making homemade deli roast beef. Let me show you how we did it. Okay, for our deli style roast beef, we're starting with a nice piece of round. This comes off of the rear section of the cow. You could do it from a sirloin. You definitely do not want to do it from the chuck section or the rib section, because you don't really cook this long enough to render fat, and we don't want chewy, fatty roast beef, right? This needs to be a lean cut. You can see here we've got some marbling and a very small fat cap. We're going to leave that because we do want moisture. One thing you have to be really careful about when making roast beef is to not overcook it. Because this is a low fat, lean piece of meat, we need to ensure that we're able to keep moisture without having chewy fat. That's why the round section tends to work out very well. This is not going to be Arby's roast beef, which is actually chipped beef that's reformed into a roast. Okay, this is going to be high quality deli meat. The better the quality of the meat that you purchase, the better your roast beef will be. We made sure that this is a prime grade Angus cut, so we're getting a really nice beefy flavor and some that intermuscular marbling that's going to help keep it moist. We're going to season this very simply. We're using salt, pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder. I'll have the recipe down below for the right ratios. This is a 3-pound roast, and that's what the recipe will be for. You can adjust accordingly. Now, if you noticed a couple seconds ago in the video, the very first thing that we did, we pat dry the meat. We want any moisture that is on the meat to be dried off. Now, before we put on our seasoning, of course, we want our seasoning to stick, so we're going to add a binder. We want to use an oil binder. I'm going to rub it down with some olive oil and then put on our seasonings. The reason we do this is for the sear. If we put meat in that has the water or the juices of the meat, what we're going to do is end up poaching the meat. It'll turn gray, but we won't get the Maillard reaction that we're looking for to create a little sear on that outside. We need to dry it off. Then we add the oil so that it'll help hold the seasonings. Then we'll be able to get a really nice sear on that outside and seal in all of the juices that we're looking for, along with creating flavor. So we'll rub this olive oil down. Then we're going to go on first with the salt. We want that salt touching every piece of the meat so that we can get a nice penetration. We are going to set this back in our fridge for a minimum of 4 hours. We could do it overnight to really allow that salt to penetrate fully. That way, when we slice this nice and thin and we're making that sandwich, we're not getting an overly salty taste like some of the store-bought brands that you get that inject a brine, but we're going to get a fully seasoned but not salty flavor. Now, even though on this particular piece of roast beef I did not add any herbs, I went with a very simple seasoning blend. You could add rosemary or thyme to really punch up the flavor. However, I would not add the rosemary or thyme yet, because all that's going to do is burn when you try to sear, and it's going to affect your sear because that little bit of rosemary and thyme on there are keeping the meat from touching the oil in the skillet that you're trying to get your sear. So these seasonings will melt into the meat, they'll be absorbed, and you'll be able to get a nice sear. Then you can add your rosemary, thyme, whatever herbs you may want to as you put it into the oven. All right, so we've got it in the fridge so that it can absorb all of those seasonings. We're going to preheat our oven to 200 degrees. Once we're ready to cook this, we're going to get our pan, cast iron, steel, either one will work. You're looking for something that you can get a good high heat on. We need this oil and this pan to be heated to a minimum of 350 degrees. You have to be at 350 degrees to get the Maillard reaction and to create the sear. Otherwise, all you're doing is pulling moisture out and you'll end up poaching your meat. So we're going to go ahead and let this heat up, and then we're going to bring in our beautiful roast that is perfectly seasoned. We're going to do this for seconds at a time. We're not going to leave this for several minutes thinking that we're building up. We're going to build layer and layer of sear. We're going to flip every 30 seconds or so. And we're doing that so that we can keep things cooking evenly. Remember that we are looking for brown sear, not for burn. The other part about nice and evenly is you want that center to remain nice and pink. We're going to cook this up to about 130 to 135 degrees. We're going to pull it, cap it with a little foil, and while it's resting, it'll go ahead and that temperature will increase and carry us up to about 140, which is where we want it for a nice medium. If you want a medium rare, go ahead and pull it a little earlier. You do you. But for me, a nice roast beef like this, that perfect 140 is kind of where we're going to go. So let's get this thing flipped around, get it together, and ready to go in the oven. All right, you can see that nice sear getting around those edges is starting to come in everywhere. We've been on all the sides. We're going to go ahead and give this thing a final flip just to finish off that top side. Let's see how we've done. Look at that beautiful brown color. It's not burnt. It's just nice, beautiful brown sear, and that is flavor. Wonderful flavor. So we're going to go ahead and get this thing pulled over to our wire rack on a pan and ready for the oven. So we go into the oven at that 200 degrees. It took about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. We just kept checking it with the probe. We hit that 136, put a foil tent over it, and let it rest. Carry it on up to 140. Then we went into the fridge overnight. Back in the fridge overnight, because in order to slice this meat very thinly, we really need the meat and muscle tissue to firm back up. So we went ahead and put it in and let it cool all the way down. And, I'm going to use this countertop slicer to be able to get really nice thin slices. But if you've got a good sharp knife and you allow this thing to firm up, you should still be able to get really good thin pieces. It turns out beautifully pink inside. The little sear on the edges, you can taste some of the salt and garlic around those edges. It's a little more powerful, and then it's nice and smooth inside. As you fold that onto a sandwich, it's going to be very, very nice. We're looking, for me, I like it thin enough that it's almost translucent, but you can go through and do it how you want to do it as far as the slices. On my countertop slicer here, I'm using the 2mm setting to go for this beautiful piece here. As you can see, it'll be so thin it'll start to tear a little bit, but that's okay. We're gonna pile that up on the sandwich and make an absolutely delicious chunk of roast beef. All right, we've got our roast beef sliced up. It is absolutely gorgeous. We're gonna make a sandwich. Let me tell you, one of the greatest things that you can have is garlic aioli for your roast beef sandwich. It's a simple mixture of mayonnaise, Worcestershire, and garlic powder. We put it into a little bowl, we whip it up, lettuce, tomatoes, white American cheese slices. Absolutely fabulous with roast beef. Makes a beautiful sandwich. You could toast it, make it warm. Try this recipe. It is amazing to have your own homemade roast beef at about $10 a pound cheaper than what I was paying for deli roast beef. We're giving away a 5-piece cast iron lodge cookware set when we hit 1,000 subscribers. All you have to do is like a video and subscribe to the channel to be entered in the giveaway.